The heat clung to the cracked pavement of Highway 9, stretching past shuttered gas stations and forgotten diners. Caius Mercer, 32, had just left the auto shop where he worked 6 days a week, grease still under his nails and sweat darkening the back of his gray t-shirt. As his faded red Ford rumbled down the two-lane road, he spotted her, barefoot, sitting on a metal suitcase, thumb out, eyes cold and tired like she hadn't slept in days. Her white lace dress clung to her legs, and scattered around her were clothes like someone had thrown them into the wind mid-breakdown. Caius slowed the truck. There was a stillness to her, like she was bracing for the worst. Blonde hair tangled around her shoulders. She didn't flinch when his tires crunched to a stop beside the curb. "You all right?" he asked through the window, voice low and steady. She didn't answer right away. Just studied him, like she wasn't sure if he was danger or a way out. She looked young, maybe late 20s, but something in her eyes felt older. "I need to leave," she said finally, her voice flat. "Now." Caius scanned the empty stretch of highway behind her. Nothing but dust and heat waves. He nodded once and leaned over to pop open the door. "Seat sticks a little," he said. She stood without hesitation, grabbed her suitcase, and climbed in, not looking back. The way her fingers clenched that handle, you'd think she was carrying a bomb. They drove a while in silence. The truck rattled over potholes as miles slipped by, the kind of quiet that wasn't awkward, it was just heavy. Caius glanced at her, unsure which question to ask first. No makeup, no jewelry, no ring, no name. She stared straight ahead like she was rehearsing what not to say. "What should I call you?" he asked gently. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Sable," she said. "No last name. Just that." Caius nodded. "I'm Caius." He offered it like a peace offering. She gave no reaction, just leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes, as if she finally let herself breathe. He didn't ask why she was there, or what she was running from. Not yet. But as the road stretched endlessly ahead, something told him that Sable wasn't just escaping a place. She was escaping a life, one that might catch up to both of them sooner than he expected. If this story hooked you from the start, just wait for what's next. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss a single chapter. Caius and Sable barely know each other, but her past might catch up to them both any second. The silence between them grew roots, settling deep into the cab of the truck. Every few seconds, Caius glanced in the rearview mirror, not at the road behind them, but at Sable. She hadn't said a word since giving her name. Her arms were wrapped around the suitcase, knuckles white. Her dress, once elegant, was now smudged with dirt from the roadside, but she didn't seem to care. She stared ahead like she was waiting for something bad to happen, like she was used to it. "Where exactly are you trying to go?" he finally asked, his voice low, careful not to disturb whatever storm she was keeping under control. She didn't answer right away. Then she turned her head slowly, her gaze sharp. "I don't know. Just far. Away from people who think they own me." She looked back out the window before he could ask anything else. Her words sat in his chest like a stone. There was pain there, but also defiance. Like she'd made a choice, and now she had to live with the fallout. Caius didn't press. He knew how to read people. The quiet ones. The ones who'd been stepped on too many times. His own past wasn't clean either. People made mistakes, and sometimes they had to drive through the night just to breathe again. Still, there was something about her that made the air feel different. Heavy, like a thunderstorm waiting to crack open the sky. He could feel it building, though she hadn't said much more than 10 words to him. "I've got a place outside of town," he said eventually. "Not much, but it's quiet. You can rest. Clean up." She turned back toward him, lips parted like she might say no, then paused. Her jaw tightened. "How far?" Caius shrugged. 15 minutes, give or take. Nobody'll bother you there. She studied him for a moment. His hands, rough from years of labor. His face, drawn but honest. Finally, she nodded once. Just once. As the truck turned off the highway, gravel crunching beneath the tires, Sable let out the softest breath. She didn't realize she'd been holding it. Caius noticed, but didn't say anything. His place wasn't much, an old trailer set back behind a thicket of pines, but it was quiet, and for now, it was safe. As they pulled up, the sun began to sink, casting long shadows across the yard. That's when Caius noticed it, a black SUV parked across the field, engine still warm. And just like that, he knew, whoever she was running from wasn't far behind. Caius killed the engine and stared at the black SUV through the windshield. The vehicle was parked crooked near the treeline, windows tinted too dark to see inside. He didn't say anything to Sable at first, just kept his hands on the wheel, brain working through the options. Whoever had been driving that SUV hadn't left it long ago. The hood still shimmered faintly with heat. "Stay here," he said, his voice calm, but sharp enough to cut through her daze. Sable blinked, her fingers tightening around her suitcase. "What is it?" Her voice was hushed, not out of fear, out of habit. Caius didn't answer. He stepped out of the truck slowly, boots crunching on dry grass. He walked toward the SUV, scanning the area. No footprints, no movement, no sound. The woods were still. But his gut told him someone had been watching. Maybe still was. He didn't dare look back at her. Not yet. After a few tense minutes, he returned. Cars empty. Whoever it was, they're not here now. Sable didn't relax. Not even a little. She just sat there, staring at the treeline like it might reach out and grab her. Caius leaned on the open door. "You wanna tell me who's chasing you?" he asked, not unkindly. "Because that's not a rental some guy picks up on a whim. That's money. Real money." She looked at him then, really looked. Her jaw was set, but something flickered in her eyes. "I was supposed to get married today," she said flatly. "To a man I didn't choose. A man whose money buys silence." She paused, exhaled. "I left him at the altar. I didn't even take a phone. Just threw some clothes in a case and ran." Caius stood still, letting the weight of it settle. Not because it shocked him, but because it made too much sense. "Was he dangerous?" he asked. She hesitated. "Not in the way people expect. He doesn't scream. He doesn't hit. But he bends people. Breaks them quietly. Like it's his right." Caius nodded slowly. He understood now why her silence felt like armor. Why she gripped that suitcase like it held more than fabric. Because it did. It held her only shot at freedom. Inside the trailer, the air was warm and still. Caius flipped on a light. "You can shower. Towels are in the hall." Sable stepped inside carefully, suitcase still in hand. But before disappearing down the hallway, she turned and looked at him. "Thank you," she said, barely above a whisper. Then she closed the door behind her. And in that moment, Caius knew, whatever he'd just stepped into, he was already in it deep. Steam curled from under the bathroom door as Caius leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, his mind racing. He didn't regret picking her up, Sable, but that black SUV haunted him. It wasn't parked there by chance. Someone with money and reach had tracked her to this town. And Caius knew exactly how people like that operated. Quiet. Legal when they could be. Violent when no one was looking. The kind that smiled while they took everything from you. The shower shut off. Silence returned, thick and tense. Caius poured himself a cup of coffee, even though it was nearly sunset. Old habit. He heard soft footsteps on the old floorboards and turned. Sable stepped into the small living room wrapped in one of his towels, damp hair slicked back, face bare. She looked different now, less like a woman on the run, more like someone remembering who she used to be. The bruises weren't visible, but he could see them in the way she walked, in the way her eyes flicked to the window every few seconds. She sat down across from him at the kitchen table. "You have any siblings?" she asked, out of nowhere. He blinked. "One. Older brother. Haven't talked in years." She nodded slowly, like she expected that answer. "I was an only child. My parents raised me to marry money. Not for love. Not for happiness. Just status." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "When I was 17, they introduced me to him. Told me I was lucky." She looked away. "It took me 10 years to realize I was a prisoner wearing a diamond necklace." Caius didn't interrupt. He knew better than to fill silence with noise. Let people speak on their own terms. He took a sip of coffee, then asked, "How long do you think you have before he finds you again?" Sable shrugged. "A few days, maybe less. Depends how angry he is. How embarrassed." She gave a bitter smile. "And he hates being embarrassed." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the distant sound of a passing train. Sable stood, towel clutched tightly. "Do you have something I could borrow to wear?" He nodded and walked to the bedroom. Came back with a folded gray t-shirt and a pair of flannel pajama pants. She took them carefully, almost reverently. As she disappeared into the hallway, he stared at the back door. He'd lived alone for years. Kept his head down. Fixed cars. Paid his bills. But now, a woman with nothing but a suitcase and secrets had walked into his world, and brought the storm with her. The next morning brought gray skies and a wind that whispered through the trees like it knew something neither of them did. Caius woke early, the sound of the creaky screen door pulling him from a restless sleep. He walked into the kitchen and found Sable sitting at the table, dressed in his clothes, her damp hair tied up with a rubber band he didn't even know he had. She looked softer somehow, like someone who hadn't stopped running, but had finally paused to breathe. "I made coffee," she said without looking up. He nodded, poured a cup, and sat across from her. For a while, they said nothing. The silence between them was different now, no longer heavy, but fragile, like it might break if either of them pushed too hard. Caius reached for the newspaper he hadn't read in weeks, a habit from before. Before her. Before the SUV. Before he remembered what it felt like to care whether someone stayed or disappeared. As he flipped through the paper, something fell from between the pages, a photo, worn and folded. He froze. It wasn't his. He hadn't seen it before. He turned it over slowly and stared. It showed a group of people at what looked like a country club wedding rehearsal. In the center, Sable, wearing the same dress she'd had on when he picked her up. Smiling. But not really. Next to her stood a man with steel blue eyes and a too-perfect grin. He had his arm around her waist like he owned her. She saw it in his hand and flinched. "Where did you get that?" she asked, voice sharp, eyes wide. "It was inside the paper," he said carefully, setting it down. "I didn't put it there." Sable reached for it, hesitated, then let her hand fall. "That's him. Rowan Holbrook." She said the name like it tasted wrong. "He's the reason I left. He smiles for cameras but controls people in private. He's powerful. Untouchable." Her voice dropped. "And I think he's already found me." Caius leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Did you bring this?" "The picture." She shook her head. "No. I swear. I don't even know how it got here." He believed her, but the unease settled deep in his bones. Someone had been inside his home, quietly, leaving behind a message not for Sable, But for him. He stood slowly and looked out the window, scanning the woods. They weren't alone. And whoever was out there wasn't just watching anymore. They were getting closer. What do you think Rowan Holbrook really wants? Drop your theory below, and tell us, should Caius trust Sable, or is she still hiding something? The knock came just after noon. 3 slow taps against the screen door, like the person on the other side already knew they were being watched. Caius moved fast, his instincts sharpened. He signaled for Sable to stay down and out of sight, and she ducked behind the couch without a word. She'd seen this before. That rhythm. That calm before someone stepped in and tried to own the room. Caius opened the door partway, just enough to see the man standing on the porch. He wore a tailored gray suit that didn't belong on a dirt road like this. Sunglasses, clean-shaven, calm. The kind of calm you don't trust. "Afternoon," the man said, smiling politely. "You Caius Mercer?" Caius didn't answer. "Just looking for someone. Blonde. About yay tall." He held up a hand. "Name's Sable." The way he said it made Caius's blood rise. "Don't know anyone by that name," Caius said, voice flat. The man didn't blink. "Sure you don't." He glanced past Caius's shoulder like he already knew she was inside. "You see a car parked near here last night? Black SUV? Might have left something behind." His tone was pleasant, but there was a cold edge buried in it. One that said, "I know you're lying, and it won't matter when I decide to stop being polite." Caius stepped out, closing the door behind him. "We're done here," he said. "This is private land. You're trespassing." The man adjusted his cuffs slowly, like he wasn't in any hurry. "You're protecting her. That's sweet. But I promise you, this isn't your problem. Let her go, and it'll stay that way." He smiled again, turned, and walked back to the sleek black car parked at the edge of the dirt road. Inside, Sable was shaking. Not crying. Shaking. "That was one of Rowan's people," she said, barely above a whisper. "His fixer. The kind of guy who gets paid to disappear problems." Caius locked the door and sat beside her. "Then we make it hard for him to find you again." She looked at him, unsure. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You don't know me." He met her gaze, steady and without hesitation. "You didn't have to tell me your whole story. I've seen enough to know what you're running from. And I know what it means to feel like no one would ever choose to stand beside you." Sable opened her mouth to reply, but outside, the same black car idled at the edge of the road. Still there, still waiting. This wasn't just a visit. It was a warning. Night fell heavy, pressing against the trailer like a held breath. Caius sat at the small kitchen table, his back to the window, shotgun resting across his lap. He hadn't touched that thing in years. It wasn't loaded, not yet. But the feel of it grounded him, reminded him of the kind of man he used to be before the world taught him to expect nothing good to last. Across the room, Sable paced silently, her arms crossed tight over her chest, her bare feet tracing the same path over and over in the thin carpet. "They're not going to stop," she said finally. "Rowan doesn't know how to lose. Especially not in public." Her voice was distant, like she wasn't speaking to Caius so much as thinking out loud. "He'll ruin everything just to prove a point. That I'm his. That I don't get to choose." Her hands trembled, and she shoved them into her pockets, trying to hide it. "You're not his," Caius said. Simple. Firm. Like it was law. She stopped pacing. Looked at him. "You don't understand how deep this goes," she whispered. "His father owns half of New Hampshire. His best friend's a senator. His sister married into oil money. He doesn't need a reason. He has reach." Caius nodded. Then he's gonna have to stretch farther than he ever has. Because you're not leaving here alone. For a moment, the only sound was the old wall clock ticking away seconds too slowly. Then Sable moved toward the table. "Why are you doing this, really?" she asked again, quieter this time. "You risk everything just because I showed up in a ditch?" Caius looked up at her, and something flickered in his eyes, something she hadn't seen before. Regret. Memory. "Because I didn't help her," he said, voice gravelly. "Someone once needed me, and I turned away. You don't get too many chances to make that right." Sable sat across from him slowly, eyes never leaving his. The silence stretched long and fragile between them again, but this time it felt warmer, like the beginning of something they both wanted but were too afraid to name. Outside, the night howled through the trees, but inside, a new understanding had settled, unspoken but real. Then a sharp noise broke it all, the sound of tires on gravel. Not slowing, not stopping, coming straight toward them. The headlights cut through the trees like blades. Caius moved fast, grabbed the shotgun, tossed a loaded shell into the chamber, and flipped the light switch, plunging the trailer into darkness. Sable didn't scream, didn't panic. She moved on instinct now. "Back door," she whispered, already crouched low. Caius caught her wrist. "No. If they're serious, they'll have someone covering both sides." He pulled her gently down beside the couch, their backs pressed to the wall. His heart pounded steady but loud. Too loud. Outside, the car door opened. 1, 2 footsteps, then another. 3 men, maybe 4. Their shadows danced across the blinds in the low beam of the headlights. One of them laughed, a short, sharp bark of confidence. "Sable," the voice called. "Come." Almost amused. "You've had your fun. Now let's go home. You know how this ends." She flinched. That voice. It wasn't Rowan, but it was someone who belonged to him. One of his puppets. One of the ones who never got their hands dirty, unless they had to. Caius felt the tension building in her body like a spring. "If they get me," she whispered, "you can't stop them. But you can still walk away. Tell them I forced you. Say I lied." Caius turned his face toward hers, only inches away in the dark. "You think I'm the kind of man who lets someone else pay the price for doing the right thing?" She looked back at him, and for the first time, tears welled. Silent. Bitter. Real. The front door creaked. Someone was testing it, pressing gently, then harder. Caius stood up slowly, shotgun in hand, and stepped toward the door. "Back off," he warned. "You're trespassing on private property." The laugh came again. "We both know that doesn't matter. This is above your pay grade, grease monkey." Another step forward. Another inch of threat. Caius gritted his teeth. "You don't want to do this," he growled. "She's not going with you." Then silence. And a shot. Not from the shotgun. A sharp crack from outside. The window behind them shattered as a bullet ripped through the curtain, embedding in the far wall. Caius dropped to the ground, dragging Sable with him. Dust and drywall filled the air. She clutched his arm, shaking now. "They're not here to scare me," she whispered. "They're here to finish it." And in that moment, Caius knew, running was no longer an option. They had to fight. The second shot hit the kitchen cabinet. Caius felt the vibration in his ribs as splinters rained down like confetti for the damned. He shoved the fridge aside, exposing a narrow space behind it, his grandfather's storm hatch, barely used, nearly forgotten. "Go," he barked. "Now." Sable hesitated only a second before crawling in, suitcase clutched tight like it held her soul. He handed her the shotgun. "If anyone opens this from the outside and it's not me, you pull that trigger." He didn't wait for a reply. The front door groaned again, hinges whining in protest. The men outside weren't worried about subtlety anymore. They were here to collect a body, not a bride. Caius grabbed the tire iron from beside the door. He hadn't fired a gun in 10 years, but he knew how to break bone. His heart pounded so loud it drowned out his thoughts, but his hands were steady. He waited. 1 breath. 2. The lock snapped. The door burst open. The first man stepped in wearing a black coat and arrogance like armor. He didn't even raise his weapon, just scanned the room with cold precision. "Cute place," he muttered. That's when Caius moved. He didn't think, he just acted. The tire iron cracked against the man's wrist, and the gun fell to the floor with a dull thud. Before the second one could react, Caius shoved the first into him, sending both crashing into the hallway wall. From the floor, the man screamed something into an earpiece. Backup was coming. Caius slammed the door shut and shoved the couch against it. His chest heaved, his knuckles raw. He wasn't built for this. He fixed trucks. He changed oil. But this was survival. Behind him, the hatch creaked open and Sable crawled out, eyes wide. "We need to go," she said. "Now." He didn't argue. Grabbed the keys, her suitcase, and his grandfather's old revolver from the closet. They bolted out the back, cutting through the woods, dodging branches and roots like they'd done it their whole lives. The air was thick, heavy with smoke, and it took Caius a second to realize why. The trailer was burning. A message. A warning. Or maybe just punishment for resisting. The fire lit the sky behind them, a reminder that they couldn't go back. Not now. Not ever. As they disappeared into the trees, hand in hand, Sable whispered, "If we make it through this, I'll never run again." And this time, she meant it. They drove for hours without speaking, the night swallowing the road in front of them. Caius's old truck groaned under the weight of everything they'd been through, but it held. It always held. Sable sat in the passenger seat, arms folded tight, face streaked with soot and tears she hadn't noticed. In the rearview mirror, smoke still rose behind them, curling into the sky like a ghost refusing to let go. Everything she had been, fiancé, socialite, prisoner, was gone. "Where are we going?" she asked finally, her voice hoarse from smoke and fear. Caius didn't answer right away. He gripped the wheel tighter, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I know someone in Maine," he said. "Friend of my dad's. Off the grid. No names. No questions. You can rest there. Figure things out." She turned to look at him, really look. "We can rest there," she corrected softly. They crossed state lines before sunrise. At a rundown gas station, Caius filled up while Sable washed her face in the restroom, staring at her reflection like it belonged to someone else. She looked older now, wiser, and free. For the first time, there was no schedule to keep, no ring to wear, no mask to hold in place. Just her. Sable. No last name needed. When she stepped back outside, he was waiting by the truck, 2 coffees in hand. They drove a while longer, then finally stopped at a quiet clearing surrounded by pines. A small cabin stood ahead, weathered but strong, like it had endured more than its fair share of storms. Caius shut off the engine and looked at her. "We don't have to go in yet," he said. "You can take your time." But Sable opened the door without hesitation. "No more hiding," she said. "I want to walk into something, not away from it." Inside, the air smelled of cedar and old books. Sable set her suitcase down in the corner and walked to the window. The world outside was still, safe. For the first time in years, she let her shoulders drop. "Thank you," she whispered. Caius stood behind her, quiet. He didn't need thanks. He just needed her to know she wasn't alone anymore. They didn't kiss, didn't promise anything, but they stayed. 2 broken people, not trying to fix each other. just learning to breathe again. And as the morning sun broke through the trees, Sable closed her eyes and smiled. Because for the first time in her life, she chose herself. Did this story hit you in the chest too? If it moved you even a little, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. There are so many people out there who need stories like this, and you can help them find it. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Sable's shoes? I'd really love to know.